Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have the program is We Shop Talk, where we kind of bring conversations to your homes and to your platforms, addressing health concerns, not just in the Black community, but in America, just in general. But more importantly, being able to stress what it is that you can do to change your story and change your outcomes, and then be able to see people that can testify about their journeys and the trials or tests that they've been through. It's We Shop Talk, and this is episode 8.
Our knowledge and truth for a healthy living is a must. Here are the experts. Here are the facts. Here is what we testify to and speak. This is We Shop Talk.
Very important subjects, and we hope you are here to listen in on the second segment, which is really to tell about people's personal stories and their journeys. We talked about intervention cardiology, what Dr. Cont.You does, and about what Dr. Cooper does, and what Dr. W.E.S.T does. These are very well-trained specialists, about 90 years of clinical experience between the three of them. Dr. Cooper is joining us virtually from Kansas City, and Dr. Gbadebo and Dr. Cont.You are both here, both practicing here in the city of Atlanta. We have now joining us on this panel 4 very distinguished guests. These are folks I've known long time, some over 25 years. They are like family to me now because I've been part of their journey. And I'm so very grateful and thankful that they're able to join us on this Sunday afternoon just to be able to tell us a little bit about their stories. Because when you hear or see issues with patients' medical chats and you look at their file and their stories, there's always more to it where you can put a face and a name. And when we go through our medical conditions, it's not just us going through it, it's the entire family, it's the spouse, it's the grandparents, it's the children. And getting to show and know all of these 4 special guests over the last 25 years has been more than very fulfilling to me just to see where we are. So I'm going to turn the microphone over to 84 of them, just for them to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about themselves, and then we'll come around again and talk just about their history. First will be Mr. Cont.You, who is a retired from the police department. We thank you again for your service. Just to tell us a little bit about yourself, Mr. Park.
Thank you, Dr. Akintobi. I'm so glad to be here on this day, in spite of the events that I've gone through. A retired police officer for 30 years with the Atlanta Police Department, and I'm just glad to be here. I've had at least 3 events of heart attacks, and I'm just lucky to be here today.
We thank God for His presence, His grace, and His mercy. On that note, we're going to come to the front to Ms. Patsy Lisby, who just recently, I've known her for probably over 25 years. I didn't know she was an ordained minister. She is, and so blessed to have her here with us. She has many stories to tell just in terms of her health. The one we're going to focus on today, of course, is as it relates to the heart situation.
Okay. Good afternoon. I am Patsy Lisby, and I've been seeing Dr. Akintobi for over 20 years, over 25 years. But I am a retired federal worker, and I've been retired 21 years. And I still work because I keep my great-grandson, and I raise my grandchildren. So I've still been busy. But all in all, I have had a good life, and God has been good to me.
And we also have Mr. Lisby here. He's also a heart survivor too, and he has many stories to tell. Mr. and Mrs. Lisby, yes, not just from the heart standpoint, but other health challenges, but they're both here with us today. So we thank you, Mr. Lisby, for making out the time. We turn over to Miss Howard, Miss Margie Howard, who I've known too for many, many years. I also take care of her mom and her son, and and her husband, and many other members of our family. Yes, so and sisters too. So we go way back. She's made time today from a very busy schedule because she's part of a ministry where she actually does a lot of outstanding work. So we thank you so much for joining us today. If you want to say a little word, Miss Howard.
Okay. Well, my name is Margie Howard, and I had a heart attack 33 years ago, and came through it really well. Had a good life after that for a long time. Didn't do any medication or anything, but because I didn't do the things I was supposed to do, some things crept back up. But I am living a good life, and Dr. Akintobi takes really good care of us, me and both my husbands. So we'll be in here to the end.
And last but not least is Mr. Calvin Denson. I've known Mr. Denson to now probably for over 10 years, and he's going to tell us his story too. And Mr. Denson is also retired but very busy with, he has a prison ministry that we always talk about every time I see him. I would thank his wife also for being here with us. Mr. Denson?
Hello, my name is, you said, is Calvin Denson. Yes, I am a minister at the Household of Atlanta, but I also do taxes and sell life insurance. And I just had my 5th grandchild born this week.
Wow.
So it keeps me busy.
Thank you so much, Mr. Denson. So let's kind of just reflect very quickly, because this is your forum now for the 4 of you. We'll have Dr. Cooper, Dr. Conjiman, and Dr. Gbadebo to chime in as we think is necessary. This is your story. We'll start with you now, Mr. Denson. I'll come back this way. Tell us about how you were diagnosed. How old were you? Was this something that was out of the blue? And what is that journey? I mean, before we talk about the journey, just in terms of the diagnosis and what happened immediately after.
Well, I was looking for a new doctor, and one of my church members told me about Dr. Akintobi. And I came for a physical. And once I had that physical, this was back in 2016, and early 2016, I had a physical, and Dr. Akintobi, in his office, which I don't know, my previous physician ran it. When they did a physical, he did an EKG. Immediately, he said, we got to get you to a cardiologist right away. And he would not let me leave his office until he knew that I had an appointment where I could go see a cardiologist before I left his office. After that, I went to the cardiologist. They found out I had some blockage. Took me over to Emory and Decatur to go in and see how much blockage I had. They said, oh, you may get to go home, or maybe have to stay overnight. They realized how much blockage I had. They said, we don't even know how you're walking. They put me in an ambulance and sent me to St. Joseph's. The next day I had a double bypass, not knowing anything was wrong with me. And through that journey, my heart got weak. I got okay, but then I had an infection. So they had to open me back up. One of the wires got infected, and I had to go through the wound bag and all. And then later on that year, they said that my heart was still kind of weak. And so they tried medication, and that didn't work. And then that November, they put in a pacemaker. And that, ever since then, I've been doing well. Matter of fact, earlier this year, I had my 2nd pacemaker put in just because the battery life was ran out. But they said that if I hadn't came in here, I could have just died in my sleep or died anywhere, because they said the main artery was blocked over 90%.
What Mr. Calvin Denson was talking about there was just a written physical. He came into the office, and I met him for the very first time, and we did an EKG. It's called the left bundle branch block, LBBB, and I'll have Dr. Gbadebo just to comment on what that means. When you look at that EKG, which we all described earlier on, old test, still effective in terms of the price and just getting a simple test in terms of just making some initial diagnosis. He had no symptoms at all. But when primary care physicians, other physicians see that, what does that mean, Dr. Gbadebo?
All right, so left bundle branch block, from our EKG recording of the heart, when is looking at the electrical signal, how the heart beats. There are 2 sides of the pumping chambers, what we call the left ventricle does most of the work, and the right ventricle. They're supposed to beat together, pushing blood forward out of the heart. The pumping action is a result of the timing of signal. It's like having a a motor in your car, but the carburetor sets the timer for the pump to pump. The left and the right are supposed to pump together. When they pump together at the same time, where it's supposed to be, you get this narrow inscription on the EKG, left and right beat together. They are on top of each other. You have this narrow recording. When you have a left bundle branch block, there's a delay of the left beating from the right. So the right beats first and then the left beat. So instead of beating together, they're beating side by side. You get this recording that is very broad where the right beats and the left beats, and they create this inscription on the EKG called a left bundle branch block. So there's something wrong when the left is beating so weak after the right is beating. So that's a sign that there may be something wrong with the mechanics of the left ventricle, which is the main ventricle, the main pumping chamber of the heart, is diseased and is weak and is responding slower than the right. That's the.
Thank you so much. And that was all that took to be able to get Mr. Denson the help that he needed. He ended up going to East Atlanta Cardiology, and then we're going to talk a little bit some more about the story. For you, Ms. Howard, 33 years ago, in the prime of your life, and you're still in the prime of your life, what was that? What happened?
Well, mine was not all of a sudden. I always knew that there was something going on in my heart. I just didn't know what. And I went to several doctors, and they just sort of said, no, you're too young for that to be your heart. And then I found out later on that females just didn't get the kind of attention that they should have gotten, with the issue like that. And I went to work on a Monday, and I was just so lethargic I could barely make it from the parking lot to my desk. And my boss told me to go home and not come back until I had a clean bill of health. So I went that Wednesday. I went to the doctor, and he did an EKG, and I'm telling him what's going on. He just kept, 40-year-old women don't have heart problems. And he sent me home. That Friday, I found another doctor to go to, and I went. Actually called this doctor and said, I need to have a physical. That morning that I called them, they asked me could I be in at 1 o'clock for the physical. I went in, and just a series of things happened. But then when I was actually in the doctor's office sitting in the chair when I had the heart attack. And, I just remembered that I did the Fred Sanford. I'm like, I think this is the big one. Because I could barely talk behind that one. So they took me from there across the street to what used to be Crawford Lawn. Mm-hmm. They had me in a wheelchair and actually took me over. And it was just a whole line of doctors there waiting to take care of me. So, but anyway, I actually drove myself to the doctor because my husband wasn't home and I couldn't wait. I drove myself there, had the heart attack, and ended up in the hospital for 2 weeks and had the bypass, had the angio. I had a 80% blockage, and the rest is history.
Well, we're thankful you're here to share this story with us. We're going to come around very quickly to Mr. Content Park. This was after retirement. I mean, that this happened. So what happened, Mr. Park?
I've had my first event was on this 2:15 a.m. in the morning. I woke up from my sleep and I was having chest pains, and it was hurting so bad. I was having chest pains, and my arm was numb. And I told my wife I'm not feeling well, and got up and got dressed, and she took me to Hillendale, the hospital at Hillendale, Emory and Hillendale. My second event occurred in 2022, I believe it was. And that occurred while I was in training at work. I was at a shooting range doing some training. And again, I suddenly started having these chest pains and numbness in my arm. And I told the range master that I was hurting, and he immediately called the ambulance, and I was transported to Emory down in Decatur. My third event occurred in 2023. Once again, I was at home and I woke up out of my sleep and I went out and took my dog out and I came back in and I started getting these sweats. I was sweating. I've never seen so much sweat before. I was sweat and I was having again the chest pains and my arm was numb and I also threw up. I threw up and we called the ambulance and then I was transported to Piedmont Henry. Those are real bad events and
we're thankful that Mr. Park, because that situation was something that we're really very extremely concerned about. And Dr. Cont.You, we did say that of the 800,000 cases of heart attacks in America every year, 600,000 are new, 200,000 are repeat heart events, like Mr. Park has alluded to. What happens often when you have a recurrence like that and for one to have 3 heart events or 4 heart events? Is that how common is that, and what do you think are the reasons behind that?
Historically, the number of those kind of events, we've gotten better with fine-tuning our medications, what we call secondary prevention, which is there's primary prevention where when you come to you and you have all these risk factors, those are addressed, but after an event, we ratchet up the secondary set of medications, go up on your cholesterol medications, go up, make sure your diabetes is well managed, sugars are well controlled, blood pressures are there, all the risk factors are managed very well. But again, all these are still, we know from certain studies that when you have a first event, there are 3 to 4 other plaques that are still culprits. And the reason we have those is, and so because we have those, that is why we go on with these medications and go on. But some of them still break through those plaques, especially people who are genetically predisposed. Sometimes the medications are not optimized, which is the risk factors are not optimized. Maybe the medications were withdrawn too quickly or not on so forth on it. We are now in an era where we're on the next generation of managing cholesterol medications, next generation of diabetic medications that are now targeted, and studies showing that they are better at managing morbidity and mortality and preventing further events. And we are, constantly improving in that era. As far as damage to the heart, it's always going to be more other areas of damage. That has to be also, again, optimized medically in the long run.
Thank you so much, Dr. Conjurman. And we're going to come to Ms. Patsy Livesey, who had an event, not a heart event, which had done very well, just like I said, too, with her husband, too. What was the story? Because we've known you, at least in my practice, for about 25 years. What happened that day?
And I was just, I'm an avid shopper, and I love to go into the mall. And just walking a short distance from my car to the mall, I was just out of breath, just totally tired. So, because I am on preventive care and I come to you every 3 months, I waited until it was my time to come to your office. And you always ask if I've had any problems. So I said, well, I'm just tired all the time. So you referred me to a cardiologist, and I went to the cardiologist and they did a stress test. She called me that afternoon and said I had a blockage. And they could treat it with medication or they could put stents in. So I said, well, what do you suggest? And she said, let's do the stents. I said, okay. And so the very next week, I was scheduled for the stents, and they put 2 stents in. And that's my story. I was never really sick or anything. I didn't feel bad, just other than feeling tired.
And that's the very, very important point for our audience to understand, and I think it's been alluded to by all our specialists, that women present in a very different way. Oftentimes could be subtle. But even in general, for the rest of the population, about 20% of heart attacks are silent. And so it's very important oftentimes too, and when I'll have the specialist comment on this too, there were times in the past when we thought, oh, when you take hormone replacement, it was actually a good thing for the heart. We've evolved from that now to where we are now to now saying, no, we probably need to back off on that. But before we go on to that, I would like to bring in Dr. Cooper. In terms of post-op care to Mr. Calvin Denson, what was it like? Because you were in the hospital for about 3 days. What was it like hearing that news, and then immediately after you had the surgery, what was your recovery like to the point where you are today?
Well, the recovery, first of all, I had to go to the wellness center over at Decatur Hospital, and it was very good. They go work out, I think it was 3 times a week, work out, and then they told me to gradually start walking, around in my block initially, and just increase it. And gradually, as I increased it, I got to where I was walking between 2 and 3 miles a day. And while I was walking, I seen that my strength came back, and everything seemed to be back normal, and everything was going well. But that wellness center, I really believe going to that wellness center, having to go through that procedure, you have to go through it, and then I guess they say you graduate from it after going. So that was really, I think, instrumental in getting me on the right track to recovery, because that really helped me get strengthened. And I could definitely tell the difference whenever I went and worked out there.
Thank you so much, Mr. Denson. So to you, Dr. Cooper, being a cardiothoracic surgeon that does this all of the time, how has post-op care evolved? And particularly now talking about cardiac rehab, how do you position your patients for that, for those who you expect to be successful and never to come back to see you again? Mute. You're muted.
Trying to spare you all the background noise.
Yeah.
But as we talked about in our prior segment, the entire treatment of cardiovascular disease is a spectrum. It's not either or, it's both and in most cases, all of the above. And so when patients come to us and they need heart surgery, we start thinking about it, or at least I start thinking about it in terms of not just the recovery from the surgery, but quite frankly, how can we prepare our patients for a trajectory that's going to put them back on a much more normal path, and to do all that we can to essentially get them back to as close to a normal population as possible that doesn't have heart disease or has never had open heart surgery. And so that begins with counseling beforehand, and a lot of that counseling is geared towards the expectations. And then after that, we're sort of talking about the immediate recovery period. And oftentimes in that period, we're trying to incorporate the simple things that we often take for granted. And I'm sure those of your guests who have had open heart surgery, things as simple as putting on your pants and your shirt can be challenging after open heart surgery. So we start with little things, walking, and that's a very, very important thing, because walking, as you all know, the first thing you do in the morning when your feet hit the floor is you stand up and you start walking, okay? So it's very important to kind of get your body back into remembering that kind of routine. And then one of the criteria that we use, even for someone who we decide, hey, can they go home or are they going to need some kind of intermediate step before they can go home on their own, is what we call activities of daily living. Can they get out of bed on their own, put on their pajamas, put on their clothes, and can they go to the bathroom on their own? Can they wash their face, brush their teeth? Can they prepare themselves for the day, or perhaps even prepare a light meal? So, but if you really think about all of those things, not just in the immediacy of what we're trying to accomplish, but how that then plays into creating a mindset that's going to allow them to continue along that pathway of slowly and gradually ramping up their activities on a day-to-day basis. And one of the things I really, really encourage our patients to do is to participate in cardiac rehabilitation. It does 2 very important things. Number one is it basically gets your body going again, all right? And that is, you having that physical strength to be able to do the minimal kind of things that you need to do on a day-to-day basis. But then there's a second component of that, And that is giving you that confidence that you're going to be okay. You just had open heart surgery. And I can tell you, having taken care of literally thousands, if not tens of thousands of patients who've had these procedures over the years, is that psychological component of, am I going to be okay? Somebody just went in here and started manipulating my heart. So that's a very, very important sort of hurdle to overcome, is just the confidence to know that you're going to be okay. And then I'll add one more thing. There's a third thing here, which is if you cardiac rehabilitation is so important, because although we know that 60% of Americans report that they do exercise, but we know of that 60% that report exercise, less than half of those are actually following the guidelines of 30 minutes of cardiac activity up to a certain heart rate, 30 minutes 5 to 6 times per week. And so what it also does, it gives you an opportunity under those in that monitored environment to push it a little bit. A, I'm okay, but B, guess what? I can actually go much further than what I ever thought I may be able to do. So those are some of the things that we think about in terms of, from a surgical perspective, in terms of recovering from open heart surgery.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cooper. And so, again, for all our guests now and for our audience too, so I think there's a consensus amongst all of the practitioners and physicians alike worldwide that anybody who's had a heart event, a heart attack, or open heart surgery needs to be on a medication we call a statin. A statin is a medication that lowers cholesterol. We're going to have them both address what statins do. When the statins came out, I think they've probably been one of the most prescribed medication in the history of the pharmaceutical industry. What is a statin? Why does it lower the cholesterol? Number one, you want to be on a beta blocker, a medication that slows the heart down and potentially can also help with blood pressure. And then you want to be on an aspirin. And those are standard medications, and I know the spectrum is broadening now as to what additional. So let's come to Ms. Howard. In terms of where you've been, it's been 33 years. Have you been on medications that have changed over time? Have you had any issues with being able to say, well, now I've had this procedure done, I feel good? Has there been a challenge in terms of being able to convince yourself to stay on these medications for this long?
There was at one time, one of the cardiologists, he was the first one to put me on a medication, Renexa, and I'm still taking it today because when I don't take it, I can tell the difference. I begin to have that lethargic, a little bit of angina and all that, so I'm faithful with taking that one. I also take a beta blocker and rosuvastatin, so I'm on all three. They're working fine for me, so I don't have any intent of stopping them because it does work. And I also take the aspirin.
Wonderful. Dr. Gbadebo then, statins, cholesterol-lowering medications, and we have a new generation of medication to lower cholesterol now. Why is that so significant in terms of primary prevention for those who have never had a heart attack and secondary prevention for those who have had a heart attack? Why are statins that important?
All right, so statins are a group of drugs that target cholesterol, particularly the bad cholesterol, LDL. We do know that the lower your cholesterol, the less your risk for plaque rupture or atherosclerotic disease. Some of these, what we call fatty or cholesterol agents in the bloodstream, they are sticky, they stick to walls of the vessels, and other things stick to them. That's how plaques get formed. And so reducing the level of cholesterol floating around the cholesterol level has been shown to decrease cardiovascular events of blockages and stuff. So for somebody that doesn't have coronary blockages, with I think below 100 is usually desired. Somebody that's had blockages, we are now for coronary disease bypass or stents, the lower the better. So under 70, maybe under 55 actually is considered a new target. So you ask about somebody had a heart attack, 3/4 of heart attacks are fresh, a quarter a year repeat events. is a continuous process. Cholesterol buildup doesn't stop. Progression of coronary artery disease is always a battle of kind of firefighting, preventing the progression. So people can have blockages this year. You look, you put a stent in, there are 3-4 blockages. One is 20-30% blocked. We don't worry about anything that's under 60-70% blockage. But it's a progression in time. You come back 2-3 years later, especially when you're not on the right medications and you keep on smoking. The 20-30% of 3 years ago now becomes 70% and leads to another event. So statins are being shown as one of the viral drugs that have reduced cardiovascular events. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And so, talking about those group of medications, we're going to go to Mr. Cont.You, just to kind of check in with you to see, I mean, having an event one time is bad enough. The level of frustration that you and your family must have experienced having to go through a second and a third time, in terms of the challenge that you faced and to the point where you are now, and I know you went through quite a bit. We had to try different cardiologists and then also get into cardiac rehab. How has that journey been, just given the recurrence and the fact that at least now things definitely seem to be much stable and you in very good shape?
It was a very much challenge, Dr. Akintobi. Just the recovery from all three of the events. This last incident that I had, that was a real challenge. It was a real bounce back. I went to the cardio rehab. Again, that helped me out real well. And then the medications that was upgraded for me, that definitely helped me out. And I think the most important thing is the trust in the cardiologist that was treating me, that was taking the time to treat me. I really did some research on the cardiologist, you know, and I had to educate myself. These three events made me educate myself and read and find out why or what it was the cause of these heart issues. You know, I've had my father wore a pacemaker, my grandfather wore a pacemaker, so they've had the heart issues as well. And now I also have a defibrillator pacemaker as well. So that has helped me, and I have found a very good cardiologist that's really concerned with me and takes the time out to explain to me, and they listen to me as well. You know, those are some of the challenges that I had. I've had cardiologists that just did not listen to me, and I just felt real bad. You know, if I tell them that, look, this medication is making me feel real bad, and they just keep me on what they want to keep me on, and I know they're going to do what's best for me. However, you know, can we change up? This medication is making me feel real bad. I have a cardiologist right now that all the above. They listen to me, they understand me, and they look like me.
Thank you so much. Very well said. And we're going to go to Dr. Cont.You. Just like Mr. Park was kind of alluding to, we know, for instance, now that if you have diabetes is almost like you've had a heart attack. The risk is almost exactly the same. So if you have diabetes that is not well controlled, just assume that you've had a heart attack. It's just that simple in terms of making it very clear to our audience. So if you have diabetes, you're as good as having had a heart attack if it's not well controlled. And so I bring that up because there are new generations of medications now. The SGLT2s, like the Jardiance and the Farxigas of the world, that we know have a major impact in terms of cardiovascular outcomes. We also have now, too, the GLP-1s, and everybody knows Ozempic and Mounjaro and Wegovy and Zepbound. GLP-1s now we know can reduce the risk for cardiovascular incidents by 20%. Not just reduce your weight, not just control your diabetes, but reduce the risk for cardiovascular events by 20%. Dr. Cont.You, where are we headed? Mr. Park, for instance, is a non-diabetic. I mean, we got the blood sugars again at some point down the road. But just talking about that risk, cardiovascular risk, in terms of diabetes and newer medications now that we're talking about. We've talked about statins as a gold standard, beta blockers as a gold standard, aspirins as a gold standard. What say you, Dr. Cont.You?
Well, Elevated sugar levels is the main issue. It's like pouring, if you have a little batch steak, it's like pouring gasoline on that. It just explodes. With the diabetes, we had known for years that by the time it's diagnosed, you were catching it actually 5 years after the damage has started. And so that's where we now got into the pre-diabetic range, which for patients it's a little challenging because, hey, how do you tell them you're not diabetic, but you're in that zone where you need medications and you need to be on another medication? And it's very challenging to do that, and it takes a little bit of arm wringing to say, hey, this helps you with getting that zone where the damage is being done, but you're not fully diabetic according to what we know it. So that pre-diabetic range needs to be very, very well addressed, and we need to say, hey, we need to get on board with the medications on it. Historically, it's been metformin and pioglitazones and so forth. Now it's SGLTs. SGLTs as a class has known that even if you are, regardless of your HbA1c, just being on them has shown to be beneficial for heart disease and prevention in terms of heart dysfunction. Again, people ask, hey, why am I on a diabetic medication when I don't have diabetes? Well, you're not necessarily on for the diabetes. You are on there to help your heart and to help your heart function and to help maintain and keep the sugar levels down, your kidney functions controlled, and so forth. So those medications are useful in terms of maintaining that damage or slow smoldering damage of elevated sugars and so forth and what they do. As far as the GLPs have drawn new attention to that in terms of we're understanding not just it's actually, to me, it almost tackles the entire multifactorial effects that we've been talking about in heart disease. It's tackling the weight, tackling the sugars and the cholesterol, and how the interplay of all those are being tackled together with this line of medications that is now showing that, like you said, 20% reduction when you do all of that on top of all of the other things that you can do. And so it's not one thing, but the group of things that it offers or modifies helps to get heart disease under control. Hopefully, right now it's in a subcutaneous form. There's some oral variants on play, and once that does, there's one out there, but not as effective as the subcutaneous, in terms of all of the things that it can do. But we're embarking on a new era of seeing how what the long-term uses of these drugs are, but also the long-term benefits of these drugs, and learning how that is. And I tell people we're probably on the largest drugs trial, because it's being widely used. And we're getting feedbacks every day. This is good, this is bad, this is good. But so far, the positive feedback has been outweighing all the other risks that are before these line of medications.
Thank you so much. And to you too, Ms. Patsy. Mr. Park just said very quietly there, but just in a very subtle way, doctor's not listening to me. My cardiologist was not listening to me. And when I had complaints, and somebody eventually that looks like him, that listens to him, how was that? Did that play any role when we sent you to go see the cardiologist, in terms of just having complete trust, and then even to ask the question, what do you recommend or what will you do?
Yes, I trust the doctors. Excuse me. I could say, man, a minister, I truly believe in God, and I believe that He gave doctors the knowledge to treat diseases. And I have no reason not to trust her. And I was thinking in terms of long-term, medication, take it, how long would the medication take to reduce the plaque buildup in the artery? And if she did surgery, would that relieve it immediately? And when she said, let's do the stents, then I was agreeable to that. And actually, it was less than a week after we had that conversation that she did that surgery done.
And I wanted to also comment, and I'm going to have the three of you comment, and then we'll come to Mr. Park as we kind of wind down. We do know that faith-based health initiatives do work. And I know that you're an ordained minister now. Is that something in terms of the health ministry in your church? How is that? Is there a health ministry in your church?
Yes, we have health ministry.
So you want to tell us a little bit about the health ministry?
Well, we have several doctors and nurses, and they all staff there. They have our members, and we all pray together, and we have conversations. We have conferences set up. As a matter of fact, we have one coming up April. I think the second Saturday in April, and they'll be talking
April
about
12th.
medical conditions. Yes, and we have built the trust. We know that God heals, but we also know that He gives doctors the ability to heal.
And that's so very well said. Because we also believe in God too. I mean,
Yes.
for most of us who are service providers, and it's important. We may not wear that our faith on our sleeves, but in the way we conduct our business and the way we go about, knowing that we've walked in the same steps. When we step out of the confines of our office, we're regular people, just like everybody else.
Yes.
Doctors are at risk for having heart attacks too, if we don't take care of ourselves. And so God has given us the knowledge, and just being able to impact people's lives, I think, is one of the ways, but also kind of sharing that as much as we can. And I'll have Ms. Howard also come. Oh, yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
You were talking about the new medication that
Give it a shot.
yes, and it's good for your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And if you took that new medication, would you still have to take the medication that you're on?
Well, it depends on how well on it. There are some people, once you're, HbA1c and all that come to a certain level, a primary care can check and see how far along you are, and if you still need to get that on it. The cholesterol medications and so forth, or the blood thinners for your stents and so forth, you would still be on it. You're not necessarily taking it for your cholesterol. What you're taking for, and this would be, Dr. Badbo went through it, if you're looking at these are the plaques in your heart arteries. These plaques is what we sometimes, to prevent further events, these medications, particularly the statins, so far we know, they stabilize those plaques. Remember, the plaques blow out and they cause a heart attack. They sometimes stabilize them to the point that that event is prolonged for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So there is still a value in taking those medications, some of those medications. Maybe you don't need the high dose of diabetes medications. If your pressure is normal, of course, there's a value in decreasing some of the blood pressure medications and so forth. But then there are some that because you've had an event that you still need to continue.
Well, there might be. So one of the medications that you mentioned too, that's been the mainstay for cardiac agents are beta blockers. We do have new data that shows that if after your heart attack or heart failure, your heart strength is close to the normal range, and you've been on the beta blocker for 3 years, and you are considered stable, you might be able to win off the beta blocker. So that's one thing out there that's promising. And I've had a bunch of patients that have been able to come off even one medicine. They're very happy with that. Until the next week when I tell them there's a new fancy thing to add.
Thank you, Dr.
Well,
Badbo.
I've had the stent since 2018.
So yeah, good.
All right.
You're doing very well.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So I would like Ms. Howard also to comment just from the faith-based initiatives that we kind of talked about, given your church, whether you have a health ministry, and then we'll come to Mr. Denson on the same note as to whether having testimonials like this for people living within the ministry might make a difference, and what kind of services do you actually offer in your health ministry?
No, we do not have a health ministry. We have several registered nurses, which one of them is one of your patients.
Yes.
But now we know who to talk to, and you can put a word in to get that set up. So I will bring that to his attention also. But yeah, it is something I wish that we did have because it's needed badly. We have a lot of diabetics there, so the mention that you made about taking the blood pressure in the barbershop.
Yes.
Because sometimes people just don't know, and that would be a good opportunity. Just set aside a day, maybe after service, and say, okay, come and have your blood pressure taken. And I think some people may find out something about themselves that they didn't know, but that's a good start, I think.
Or even the hairstylist. All the ladies go to the stylist every week. So can we check our blood pressure while we're at it? Because you'll be surprised the kind of stories that you hear from in those settings, and you develop a relationship. You have a hairstylist 30 years. I have some that retire, and they struggle to retire because they've known their patients for 40, 50 years. And like, I can't do it. I still have to work part-time because they don't want to go see anybody else. So they know them, they see their kids grow and the grandkids. So those are the opportunities I think we can definitely explore, to your point. And to you, Mr. Denson, health ministry?
We have a couple of areas. First of all, we have Wednesday noon, we have a Bible study, but at 10 o'clock prior to that, they actually have a workout session, and then they have someone come in for an hour and talk to them about health issues, and then they have a slight snack, and then they have Bible study. Now that we're actually in Lent, we're doing it not only at noon, we're also doing it at the 7 p.m. Bible study as well. And the pastor is actually participating and actually leading it. And just last month, we had a health fair there with Emory. Different resources came out, letting everyone know what's available for them that actually help them. And so we try to do it continually throughout the year. And then we have blood drives that we do throughout. We just had one about 2 months ago. So we constantly trying to make them aware. And that's one of the things the pastor tries to put in front of them, that, spiritual health is one thing, but your physical health is also just as important.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Very well said. And as we kind of wind down, Mr. Denson, we'll start with you and we'll come back this way. What is it that you will have wanted to know, before your heart event, that looking back now you think will have made a difference for you?
What I feel like would have made a difference to me, I was an athlete. And so I felt like I'm in shape. But I knew I had to gain weight. And I started losing weight, and then I was feeling a little tired. But I said, well, that's just because I'm starting to work out again. And not thinking that when your body starts giving you signs that it's different than what it used to be, you need to get it checked out. Because we think that we can work through certain issues, but we need to get a medical attention to verify what it is that we're actually doing, and is it really helping us or is it hurting us? Because I told you about when I came to you, I didn't know anything was wrong with me, but I didn't tell you, but I came to you like early that 1 week, but that Saturday I'd help someone move that stuff out of the storage unit into a house. And I would maybe sit a box down and say, oh, I'm tired. But I said, but I can't let them see that I'm tired. I got to keep working. And so a lot of times things like that, those were signs that I felt was just because I was trying to get back in shape. I was trying to go to the gym more often. I was working out. So well, my body is getting back where it used to be. But that was a sign that something more serious was there that I wasn't even aware of.
Thank you so much, Mr. Denson. And to you, Ms. Howard, anything you would have loved to do differently? Looking back last couple of years, and as we project into the next couple of years in terms of whether you had to make lifestyle changes and all of that, knowing that what happened 33 years ago.
Okay, and looking back, I was probably 40 years old before I started going to the doctor on a regular basis. And that's something I would encourage people to do now, because things, as you said, things can be going on and you don't have a clue. But if you go in at least once a year getting a regular checkup, you can just kind of be mindful of what's happening in your body. So that's something that I would change, and I encourage my grandkids and stuff to do, is to just take care of yourself. Go see Dr. Akintobi, But yeah, going forward, we're faithful with coming in for all of our exam. We're in here every 3 months.
Yes.
Whatever needs to be done, we do it, and we do trust our doctor.
And to that point, the point that Ms. Howard just made, if you look across America today, the person with the lowest life expectancy is the African American man. The African American man is one that dies the youngest. White women are the ones that live the longest. And part of the reasons that they've been talking about is that women plug into the healthcare system much earlier than men do. Why? Women have menstrual cycles. They may have menstrual issues. The women are the ones that carry the pregnancy. They may plug in when in their late 20s and 30s because they have to go see an obstetrician and a gynecologist. And so that gets them into the healthcare system. Men oftentimes don't have to deal with a lot of no gynecological issues, no pregnancy issues. They're there to support their spouses. But oftentimes they may not feel anything in their 30s and their 40s. And by the time they're coming in, looking at that model that Dr. Cont.You was describing, the plaque has built up over that time. And where do you then go from there? So encouraging our male clients and audience, if you have, for all the young males that you have in your life, whether they're in their 20s or 30s, it's never too early to go on in and get checked up. You don't have to be an athlete to have that checkup because things are taking place in your body that you may not have an idea about. And the whole point of this is you don't want to wait until you have symptoms before you start to act. Because if I say at the end of the day, we can prevent 80% of heart attacks, it is real. 80% is preventable. For those that smoke, if they quit smoking, a third of those heart attacks will be gone. And so it's important to just kind of always put that into perspective to say that even if one is in one's 20s, as you get past that college age, if it's once a year, go in and get checked up and be informed about your numbers. And so, yes, ma'am.
I just want to say one other thing. You're talking about what the women do versus the men. Women we talk about our issues to one another. And then once we find out something is going on with somebody that doesn't look quite right, then we will encourage them to go check it out. But we would talk it out. I mean, just sit and listen to what I have to say, and then we offer suggestions.
It's so true. And so it's so true because even along those lines, I'll give an example. We had two brothers that had prostate cancer, and they didn't tell each other. Dealing with it privately and separately. Two brothers from same dad, same mom, dealing with prostate cancer. It took them almost 3 years before the other person knew that they were dealing with the exact same thing. But women will chat. My daughter can be on the phone with my wife for hours on ending, or sisters and mom, and just having those conversations. And in those conversations, healthcare things come into play. Men just don't do as much in terms of having complete trust in being able to share and learn and know that, well, you're not alone. You know, when these issues are going on, there are lots of other folks who have been through that. Mr. Denson.
You kind of said what I was going to say. We have a men's ministry, and once a year we do a health. We have an annual meeting, and we have doctors come in and talk to us. And one of the biggest things that it really pushes getting your prostate checked out. And we have men in our men's ministry who've had prostate cancer, and they say, I'm going to share it because I want to help you, somebody else, to know what I've been going through so you don't have to go through what I'm going through. And they talked about the different options that they had to look at, different treatments they had to go to, and they're openly, I think men are getting more open now to discuss health issues with each other. And especially in the church environment, you know, people you tend to share more because you got people that you trust, and you figure that they're going to keep it confidential within themselves. And that's been a big help to us, that we help others, brothers have helped others out.
Thank you so much, Mr. Denson. And to you, Ms. Livesey, just along those lines too, in terms of what you will have wanted to know looking back, and what you like for our audience to know moving forward. I mean, we've talked about getting checkups and being open and finding people that you trust that you can share. What would you have wanted to know looking back, and what are you doing differently moving forward?
I can't think of anything because I was feeling fine. I thought I was healthy and everything. And I know that I had gone through cancer, like in 2009. I didn't have to have radiation treatment or anything like that. I just had a cancerous tumor removed. and I was doing fine, thought I was well, but I kept my appointments. I went to the doctor every 3 months, my preventive care. And so I always encourage others to take care of themselves and do the same thing. As you know, many members in my family come to you.
Yes.
But that's because we all encourage each other to take care of ourselves and to pay attention to your bodies. Your body gives you warning signals when something's not right. So pay attention and do something about it. And while I'm talking, I want to just give a slight testimony about my husband.
Yes.
He's a cancer survivor.
Twice.
Twice. And when he had his first surgery, when they brought him out of the operating room, he went into AFib. He never knew anything about having a heart problem. He went into AFib, and they wouldn't release him from the hospital until they checked him out and found many blockages. They couldn't do the stents, so they waited 6 weeks. They allowed him to heal from his cancer surgery, and they did open heart surgery on him. He had to have triple bypass, and he still walks 6 miles a day.
Wonderful.
5 days a week. Never missed a beat, even when he was in the hospital and the nurses got him up to walk. They said, well, he went off and left us. And that's because he pushes himself. He takes care of himself. He exercises, and he walks 5 days a week, 6 miles. And he tries to encourage me to walk with him, but I got bad feet, and so I won't walk with him.
We know. I said that is work in progress, because we talk about that every time I see him. It's absolutely amazing. Yes, yes, wonderful. And to you, Mr. Parker, as we kind of wrap up, just given your journey and your family history now, and the fact that you had to dig deep and to know a little bit more about your history, what would you encourage our audience about knowing your past, figuring things out, and asking the right questions?
Well, it has been a long journey, and let me say this here, Dr. Akintobi, I really appreciate you. I've been with you over 25 years. I mean, I was with Dr. Lassane before, you came along, and I really appreciate you calling me late at night, making sure that I'm doing well after my challenges and getting released from the hospital or being treated. You've been very expert, as one would say. That's why I've probably been with you for 25 years or so. I don't change doctors just like my barber. I don't change barbers. I don't change my doctors either. You got to stick with them. If you get somebody, you got to stick with them. But since I've had my challenges, some of the changes that I have made is eating, my eating habits. That is so important in what you put in your body. One of the other things, let me back up a little bit. I worked for the police department for over 30-some years. And, one of the biggest problems there is emotional survival, and your health. I mean, you're running from call to calls. You're not even paying attention to yourself. And I guess it was a buildup. It was clearly a buildup of my health, of some of the things that I was going through. And I actually was in denial. I've asked you a couple of times to take me off a certain medication. You said, no, sir. So, I was in denial about the declining or my health issues. So that's one thing you have to recognize as well. But you have to eat right. You have to do the medications and do what the doctor tells you to do. You have to exercise. Those are the things. I walk every day with my dog. And those are the changes that I've made. And you have to put your faith in God's face. That's the most important thing. And he will navigate you and guide you and direct you. And anybody that come in contact with you, including your doctors. So he steered me to the right doctors, and I'm so thankful. And I'm glad that I'm here today, because other people that have gone through some of the things that I've gone through didn't make it. So there was 1 million that didn't make it, but I was one of the ones who did.
And I also want to recognize Miss Pat too is here with us too, because just like we talked about, when these events and situations happen, it's the whole family that is fully involved. And I just want to say a very big thank you to our panelists who have come to share their stories. We don't take this for granted at all, because again, it's going to impact people's lives. To say that when you have your test, it can become a testimony. When you have a trial, it can become a testimony. And that when you follow through on things and you don't wait for things to happen, that you listen to your body, you can turn things around. And these are examples here with Ms. Patsy Livesey, with Mr. Cont.You, with Ms. Margie Howard, and with Mr. Calvin Denson, to let you know that even having a heart attack, or one or two, does not mean it's going to be the end of life. That there is life, a lot of abundant life outside of that. But just kind of following through and listening to your body and following through on what all the things that we've talked about. As we wrap up, I'm going to have Dr. Gbadebo to give us just his closing thoughts, and same thing with Dr. Conjurman, and then we can wrap this second segment up. Dr. Gbadebo, thank you so much for your time too, for your insight and your expertise. Just your closing thoughts.
Well, I've learned a little bit myself. I've been in practice cardiology over 25 years, and so the testimonies of seeing from the patient point of view, sometimes again, listening to your patients is important. You're kind of working through the issues and with them, being supportive, and I think there's definitely a partnership that is important, but the patients have to show up. I can't tell you how many patients I tell, they treat their cars better than they treat themselves. Every 3 months, without any problem, they take you for oil change and everything. You don't wait till you see the blue smoke and the red smoke every 3 months. But they never go to the doctor unless they feel bad or so something's happening. So that's part of it. Again, heart disease develops over time. It takes a long time. And most of the time, by the time you actually diagnose, it's been a long time coming. And diabetes has been going on, blood pressure has been going on. So I think prevention is key, showing up as much as possible, at least annually, just to kind of check things out without feeling bad. It can really reduce the problems. And I think you guys are survivors. You've learned, you've become somewhat advocates of helping other people and in the community. I mean, this is a very helpful program, and whatever you can change, eating habits and incorporating exercise and all that. So I think it's very useful. The longer you live, the longer you live. We are inventing new strategies, new things every day to help people continue to live. I think this is useful, and it's a great opportunity, and I'm thankful to be invited to participate.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gbadebo. Dr. Conjurman, you too, just your comments, your closing thoughts as we kind of wind down.
Thank you for inviting me. It's nice to meet all of you and to see all of you guys on several levels. And one thing I tell people is you had an event, but don't ever become what I call a cardiac cripple, where all you say is, I got a heart problem and I'm not going to do anything from now on. You guys are testimony to that. All of you guys are so active, and doing all the things that you do, and blazing a positive way forward. I love seeing that. The other thing that I love seeing is that you guys have taken on is the testimonies and the mission works that you're doing in your churches. Very, very important. As somebody who goes to a church, that community sometimes is resistant, because it's where do you go to man for help and where do you go to God for help? And sometimes they both go hand in hand, and people don't realize that God has given us the gift to be able to take care of ourselves, but on the other hand, we still need to rely on God for some of those things, and helping people understand that it's not, binary. It's all one or the other, because God doesn't see it that way. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in business, right? God would drive us out of business, right? So God doesn't see it that way. So we need to teach other people that. So the mission that you guys are doing in your churches is very encouraging to hear it and carry on, and whatever we can do to help, please let us know. And
thank you so much, Dr. Conjiman. And Dr. Cooper had to leave. You joined us from Kansas City today. This has been a very lively conversation, and this is part of that testimony, is that we speak to let people know what is possible, what our journey has been. What the journey is is only part of the story, but to be able to see people's faces and to learn. So we're going to have many more health roundtable conversations in the coming months. We're going to be talking about kidney disease. We're going to be talking about kidney transplants. We're going to be talking about menopause. We're going to be talking about women's health issues. We already have talked about prostate cancer and breast cancer and colon cancer and obesity. There are just multitude of topics for us to cover, and our job is just to do the best that we can to educate our community and to let us know the peculiarities of the health concerns that we have. It's not just with us, but there's so much that we can do. At the end of the day, at least as it relates to heart, please go to heart.com or heart.org, which has the what they call the list of 8 essential things that you can start to do from today. Making sure you have a regular checkup. Your blood pressure should be at goal at 120/80. Your blood sugar needs to be at goal. If you're non-diabetic, less than 6. If you're diabetic, less than 7. A1C. Blood sugar needs to be less than 150, essentially. Your bad cholesterol needs to be good. And if your bad cholesterol is good, the likelihood of having a heart attack is less. You need to be physically active, walk about 30 to 45 minutes every 5 days a week, or take 10,000 steps every day. The average person in America takes only 2,000 steps a day. If you smoke, you need to look at ways to quit smoking as much as you can, whether it's smoking, e-cigarettes, or vaping. They all have the same consequence. So those are some of the things, and all these other things on the list also relates to nutrition, which Mr. Park talked about eloquently. They want to watch your salt intake, less than 2 grams of salt every day. You want to be sure that when you do eat fat, you're eating the healthy fats, which is monosaturated fats and polysaturated fats. So less of fatty foods. If you want to use oil, there are so many better kinds of oil to use, whether it's canola oil or the extra virgin olive oil. You want to grill more than you fry, and then watch one's weight. At the end of the day, if you can do these 8 things, the likelihood of having heart disease and a heart attack is less. 80%, again, this can not be overemphasized, 80% of heart attacks in America are preventable. 80. That's 4 out of 5 heart attacks. And remember, heart attack is the #1 cause of death in America today for men and women, irrespective of age and race. We thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you on following coming episodes in the coming weeks and months. And thank you so much again to our guests and our testimonials. See you soon.
Now that you heard the facts, apply the knowledge. Contact your doctor or healthcare specialist. Scan the QR code to provide more information on today's talk. See you on the next We Shop Talk.